Hello and welcome everyone. We are here winding down World Water Week, the 2023 edition. My name is Nancy Lilly. I'm the program coordinator for the Resilient Watershed Strategy with the Nature Conservancy. And here at World Water Week, we've been talking a lot about innovative strategies and seeds of change, recognizing this week that we can't move forward without collective action. It's a communal effort. Collective action this week has been framed as coordinated efforts among interested parties, pooling together complementary roles, including knowledge, resources, expertise, all working together to identify solutions and at various scales to address shared freshwater challenges. Today, we're going to be talking about measurable water security outcomes, and we're going to talk a little bit about who I have here today and the questions. The Nature Conservancy is one of the largest conservation organizations in the world. We work in 79 countries and employ some of the top freshwater scientists. Diageo is one of the largest corporate beverage distributors. They have projects in over 180 countries and manufacturing plants in 30. These organizations are working together under a collective action framework, and today we're going to dig into some of the translating the watershed investments into measurable security outcomes, alongside some of the challenges and solutions that come along with that work. I have Diana Madrigal here, who works with the Nature for Water facility, Michael Alexander, who is the Senior Corporate Engagement Officer for Water and Resilience at Diageo, and Nabia Ofosu-Oma, who is the Senior Corporate Engagement Officer for Water and Resilience at the Nature Conservancy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
We're going to start with Nabia. Will you lead us into the conversation talking about what are private companies' main challenges when creating collective action programs?
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thanks for having us here today. In terms of the challenges that we see in working with private companies on collective action and water security challenges, really getting companies to work together and thinking about, potentially putting aside some of their individual ideas, their individual goals, and kind of coming at the broader watershed challenges. It can be hard to do. Sometimes you're talking about companies, or you're talking with companies who don't often work directly together. They may even be competing in a marketplace. They may have very different goals and objectives, but they're all drawing on the same resources. So trying to bring those organizations together can be a challenge. Asking them sometimes to put aside their logo, their differences, can be difficult. I would also say the length of time it takes to work on these challenges can also be something that is hard to overcome. It's not going to be in a couple of weeks of conversation that you'll be able to determine the shared watershed challenges and how to overcome them. It can take months, it can take years. So that's another thing that can be difficult. And then I'd also say sometimes aligning on the specific issues. So we may be able to understand that these watershed challenges are common and that we want to work together. But sometimes one company might want to work with their agricultural producers, another might want to work very close to their operational facility. So how do you really align on one specific project that can meet everybody's goals? So these are some of the challenges that we are seeing when we're trying to bring different companies together to work on water issues.
Thank you. Michael, we would love to hear from you about the other side.
Yeah, no, I agree with Navia entirely. And just to briefly explain who Diageo are, so we're a global alcohol beverage company. We have brands like Smirnoff and Johnny Walker and Guinness and Tanqueray and Baileys and many others. And more importantly, we have operations in 30 countries, and about a third of our volume globally that we produce is produced in water-stressed countries. So that's really important to us, water and being responsible users of water, but going beyond that and working with others to address systemic water risk issues as a shared water risk in those catchments. So we have a priority 12 catchments that we're focusing on and working with many partners. So collective action is very close to our heart. We have a specific target for 2030 around collective action, and we firmly view that we need to invest in collective action if we're going to address our climate risk. But collective action is not easy. So we know we've got to make compromises. We've got to really kind of think out the box. We've got to recognize that we don't control it. We're used to investing in stuff that we control and we can manage inside our four walls. And we know what the return on investment is going to be. but that doesn't happen necessarily in collective action. So there's a bit of a cultural kind of behavioral shift that we've got to make. But equally, we also have the benefit of understanding that good governance in a collective action is important, that secure funding, for example, is really essential to enabling collective action to be effective. And I suppose also just trying to look at the longer term. You mentioned it. How do we look at a longer term frame? Companies don't naturally do that. They look in 2 to 3 year cycles. They can fund that, but how do we actually look to 5 to 8 to 10 year cycles? And companies aren't good at that, to be honest. So we need to be a bit more long term thinking about it, and we need to think about the scale we can create. So, it is hugely important to us. We won't be managing our climate risk without investing in collective action. But at the same time, we need to work with the right partners, and we need to drive the right outcomes and set up for success.
Yeah, so I'm hearing themes about time and collaboration, aligning goals, geographical alignment. Deanna, do you have anything to add to this list of challenges?
Yes.
It's short.
Yes, of course. So I also see a challenge in the geographic overlap. Sometimes, like companies have done a really good job in looking outside the fence, looking even outside their communities, but sometimes they're very focused in a basin, for example, and they might be losing great opportunities for collective action in the next door basin.
Yeah. So these challenges are quite massive and can be overwhelming to overcome. But as organizations of the scale that we're here to address those, right? And so I'd really like to dive into some of the potential solutions to overcome these using collective action frameworks. Michael, we'll start with you.
Well, the first thing I'd probably say is don't reinvent the wheel. And I know the wheel's just sort of been created a bit, so we're at the forefront of this, but at the same time, let's learn from others. I think that's hugely important to learn from, and TNC have been at it for a while, so them and a few others are the most experienced organizations in the world to bring together companies and other stakeholders to really drive collective action at a catchment level. We do collective action at a global level quite easily because it is easier because we don't have to make geographic and thematic and impact compromises. We can be much more collaborative at a global level. But when it comes to local, that's much more difficult. There are challenges there, as we've just heard, but I think we need to use the frameworks and the solutions that others have developed and that work, and not have too high expectations too quickly. Make the compromises that we talked about earlier as well. Build the relationships. They're really important, really important. And, the Nature for Water facility is key in terms of doing it properly and bringing in the right partners, understanding the context and knowing that you're doing it the right way. And for us as a company, it's really important to partner with the right people. We're not experts in this area. We're experts at making delicious premium products, but we're not experts in water and working collaboratively necessarily. And we shouldn't be the conveners either. It should be independent, objective organizations that have got the credibility and also the science behind that to really drive a collaboration that's effective.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Nature for Water facility. Well, we have somebody here that can tell us a little bit about that, and I would really love to hear from Deanna about what the Nature for Water facility is and what they're all about.
Yeah, so the Nature for Water facility is a technical assistance facility. What we do is basically provide support to organizations that want to start a watershed investment program. But in the case of Diageo, we are supporting them to find or scope collective action and provide them with a science-based recommendation or a technical recommendation. So in the means of not reinventing the wheel, we're basically helping them scope who's there in whichever country that we might be talking about, who's there, what are they doing, and what impacts are they having in the basin, and then providing them like the technical recommendation on where would a partnership have the most potential.
Great. So, Michael, we'll turn it back to you. What has the Nature for Water facility partnership with Nature for Water, what has the Nature for Water facility and Diageo partnership looked like, and what has it meant for Diageo to be able to unlock this?
Well, it's, I mentioned earlier, you need to get the right partners, and we believe we've got the right partners. We wouldn't be sitting here if that wasn't the case. But as I mentioned, we've got a commitment to do collective action in 12 priority basins to really change the dial in terms of water security in those basins, and we can't do it without the experts. So effectively where we're starting is we're talking with our local teams. Let's take Kampala as an example. So we're talking to our local team in Kampala because we have a brewery in Kampala and we have a sourcing area in the north and northeast of Kampala. So we work with the local teams and down in the teams to understand what the material issues are in the catchment, and then do the science behind that, and then get a lot of data to understand what the kind of trajectory looks like in terms of water risk, what the material security issues in that catchment, to scope that. And probably more importantly for us is then have the relationships and the networks go out in that catchment to understand who's doing what and where and why and for how long with how much money. So that really gives us a set of options at the end of that to say, well, you could do this here or you could do this here. And it's probably not the perfect collective action already ready-made for us, but we don't want to start from scratch. We don't want to reinvent the wheel because there's already something there that we can build on. And in that case, we identified a project and an initiative that we can join. So we did that, and that's great. Let's hope that's a success. But without the facility, we wouldn't have had that insight, and without the kind of objective science-based assessments that the facility is doing is we shouldn't be doing that. As I said earlier, we're not the experts. So it's been really valuable in helping us. So we're kicking off that collective action in Uganda, and we're moving on to other key markets for us shortly. So fingers crossed. It's early days, but I'm really confident that it's the right approach that we've adopted.
So I'm hearing that Diageo would not have been able to do this on its own, and it's that partnership that is really making the projects thrive, and you're hoping to grow that same work
Definitely.
as time moves on. Nabi, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it's been really great to see how Diageo and the Nature for Water facility have been working together, and understanding, you need to start from the beginning in terms of how are you translating this into measurable water security outcomes. We talk about collective action so much because we recognize that, you can't do this alone. You're not going to make that impact on water security, without other partners. So having the facility that's able to identify those partners, do that scientific analysis, is really great. And if we have time, I can also talk about some specific outcomes as well. So just let me know, Nancy.
Yeah, I think we will have time.
Okay.
But one of the things I'd like to highlight is that the facility is not so you said that all the projects start from zero, but the facility comes in with over 20 years of experience from the Nature Conservancy doing watershed investment programs across the globe. And so we're able to take a framework that can really build a watershed investment program, ideally, at the speed of trust, right? You can never go faster than your partners on the ground, but we're hoping to move forward a little bit faster because we have many crises on our hands, right?
And I can maybe just add that I think where the facility is also the reason why we were so attracted to it was the flexibility and agility it has to move from country to country. A group of experts that have the network locally to get the data and the insights. But actually, so we've been in Uganda and now we're in India. We're looking at Nigeria. We'll probably look at Turkey. So these are, and it doesn't mean that TNC have to have a big team on the ground everywhere, because the facility can kind of ensure that we're getting the right information and the right people in the right network. So that, across the 12 countries where we're going to be doing collective action, it was really important to partner with an organization that had that flexibility, agility, if you like, to be able to move on to the next 100. It's quite, each one's different. As find out, they're very different, and it's hard work. It's not easy, but if we're partnering with the right people and with the right relationships, I think it makes it a bit easier.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, I totally agree with what he's saying. Like, we are flexible, and we also rely on others. Like, what are they doing on the ground? Like, if there were no people on the ground working, other organizations, then we wouldn't be able to recommend anything. But ideally, that's what we're looking for. Like, who's in the ground? What are they doing? And just understanding the impact of what they're doing.
Yeah, so all the work and programs and partnerships that are on the ground can be really hard to connect with when you think of the scale of TNC, the scale of Diageo. Nabia, would you mind just talking a little bit about how we translate these investments that are kind of at a higher level into measurable water security outcomes for those on the ground?
Sure. Thank you for that. I think, as you mentioned, so the Nature Conservancy has been working on these sorts of watershed investment programs for over 20 years now. Our first kind of water fund initiative set up in Quito, Ecuador in the year 2000. And now we have over 50 watershed investment programs that we have invested in all around the world that have kind of all of what we're talking about, have done that scientific analysis of what's happening in the watershed, have set up a program, a governance mechanism, and are investing in different on-the-ground conservation activities that have water benefits. So in Nairobi, which is an area where Diageo is a partner in the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund with many other corporations, with local government, with other community organizations. We've been working in that area since 2015. And I have written down some of the specific water security outcomes because I don't want to forget the numbers. So we've been able to reach 142,000 farmers with different improved agricultural practices. That's affecting almost 300,000 acres of land with improved management practices and 300 kilometers of rivers that have riparian lands conserved. And that is translating into 2 billion liters of water that are stored through these irrigation pans that we've been working with. And that's on an annual basis, so 2 billion liters every year, as well as a 16% water quality improvement with less sediment going into the river. So that's a really tangible example of how bringing together that many partners, Diageo, I know you reach many farmers through your work, but in terms of doing one water project where you're reaching out to 142,000 farmers would likely not be possible without collective action. And then lastly, I'll also say that project has seen some co-benefits as well. So we've been able to quantify 1.3 million tons of CO2 that's been sequestered through some of the forestry practices that we've been doing. So seeing the additional benefits that these projects can bring, both for water security, but then also measurable outcomes for other issues as well.
Yeah, nature-based solutions are helping in a myriad of different ways, both in water security and other co-benefits, just like you mentioned. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I just think that's, you brought it to life so well, haven't you, there? I think the last thing I'd say is that, we've talked about the challenges a lot, and so that can be a deterrent and well, it's too difficult, I won't do it. Through working with the facilities and we've managed to make some decisions and some investments and gone ahead with it. And so I would say, I would encourage others that are on this journey, not to be put off by the challenges. It doesn't have to be perfect first time, but when you hear from Navia the kind of impact it can have across multiple different dimensions in terms of water quality, carbon, climate, nature, most importantly, farmer income and welfare of their families and their communities, So I think that says it all. So, I would just encourage others to go down this journey and get involved in collective action in areas that are really material to them.
Yeah, so we're just talking about one partnership here today. Maybe Diana, you could tell us a little bit of how others might, if there's other corporations that are interested, how they could partner with Nature for Water or the Nature Conservancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we are here, we have a fee for service and a pro bono. We do both. So we are here to help any organization. And I just wanted to say that I hope that next year we can come back and see those numbers duplicated, because we'll be joining collective action in other countries. Like as Michael said, we're going on in India right now. We're working in India. We're working in Nigeria and Turkey and many more to come. So we really hope to see those numbers growing and the number of organizations that we are working with growing as well.
Yeah, the director of the Water Funds for Africa really loves to really give that number, 142,000 farmers, a visual image. And he shows off a picture of a football stadium. And he said, this is how many farmers we've reached. And so it is quite an inspirational thing to think of how quickly that could grow if we're using these frameworks well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Many more stadiums to come.
Many more stadiums to come. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and I just want to say thank you to you all. This is an example of really fantastic projects, but like you said, collective action is something that we've been talking about a lot here, and it's easy to say, but it is hard to bring together and actually do well. So congratulations. We're excited to be working together. And thank you, everybody online who's joined us. And to those of us in the room, we'll continue the conversation in just a moment.
Thank you.